What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful night tonight. Fresh cup of tea, just made it. Lipton. Delicious. It's delicious. They have mastered the tea making process, or the tea leaf making process. I'm actually making the tea. That is so good. I was watching some Rocky Marciano fights not too long ago, a couple hours ago, and a lot of people they have the false belief that the taller you are, the more beneficial it is in boxing, and it may be true to a point. I mean, you know, if you're like 3 feet tall and you're fighting somebody that's 6 feet tall, probably the guy that's 6 feet tall is going to have a bit of an advantage. But if you're too tall, it's like basketball, you know. Height is good for a lot of things in basketball, but the free throw line and shooting from far away, it's not beneficial. You can't make the arch if you're too tall. Kind of the ball goes, you know, and it bounces off, and you have Shaquille O'Neal syndrome when it comes to the free throw line. Slam dunking, that's a different story. And boxing is kind of similar. If you're too tall, it's difficult to punch an opponent downward, you know, and be, you know, effective. You can't do uppercuts. You know, you're too tall where you're going to hit the uppercut's not going to land right. Even the straight shots. So anyway, Rocky Marciano was, what was he, like 5'10" or something? 5'11" maybe. About 185, 190 pounds. But he was the perfect height to destroy the body and hit you on the chin the right way, because he had the leverage. And as long as you have the leverage, you can knock anybody out. So I was watching a lot of the old fights. They're all old now. And I remember when I was a lot younger, like in my prime, I would go quite often to the Marciano sporting goods store. And I'd go check out the stuff. I'd buy something, you know, I always bought something. I have a story about the boxing gloves, which I mentioned a while back, but I may mention it again. So one particular time I was in there and I bought the gloves that I'm speaking of and a few other items, and I went to the cash register, and this was like a family-run business, and there was Rocky's niece that was, you know, doing the typing away with the numbers, and very nice and very attractive, you know, very pretty. You know, I don't know now we're all older, but she had the look back then. And I went to her. She was the only one you couldn't. It wasn't like a, what do you call it, a Ralph's checkout where there's like 7, 8 people you can go to. She was the only one, so I went there. And then as I'm, you know, just hanging out at the register, she puts the stuff in the bag, and then she signs, you know, kind of like doodling away. I wasn't even paying attention, but I looked down and she was signing her name on my bag. I said, oh, that's cool. So I said bye, and I went home. I cut out that section of the bag that she signed, and I put it in my yearbook. And I had that for years and years and years and years. And then one day I went to my yearbook and it was gone. So I'm kind of upset about that, but it got lost somehow. I don't know if I tilted the book a funny way and it fell out and the wind took it away. But yeah, I always remember her. I say she is very cute. Yeah. Now, I don't know whatever happened to her, but I do remember, and maybe I'm having false memory syndrome here, but I do remember she signed Alicia Marciano. I've looked her up just like 10 minutes ago to see what the hell's going on, and it does not pop any niece called Alicia. It pops a sister named Alice, but, you know, but it does say, you know, they don't have records of all his nieces and nephews. But I am 100% sure that that she did sign my bag, It was a white bag, plastic, blue ink. And I do know that I kept that for many, like a long time. And I remember her name was Alicia Marciano. Now maybe the Alicia part is wrong, I don't know. But I can't find anybody with that name related to Rocky except for a sister who was Alice. And not the one from Mel's Diner. But yeah, I looked at it, I said, that's a good looking girl right there. We were young, I think we were, I don't know. This is like, I think I was around 18. Something like that, 17, 18 when I went up there. And maybe she was a similar age. I don't know how old she was. But I have been up there since a few years back, and now it's a joint venture. I think it's Marciano, and I think I don't know 100%, but I know about 80% that I think that either Joe Grogan, you know, from the Patriots, or somebody joined forces, and they and maybe it's not even there anymore. I haven't even checked that part. Let me see something. Let me see here, I'll tell you right now, because I have the technology. Years ago, we had this technology. We had to go to the library and look things up. Nowadays, in the palm of your hand, somebody has a question. My bride, if I say something, immediately she's fact-checking me. You know, I could say, you know, whatever, the moon is, you know, 250,000 miles from Earth, and she'll be fact-checking me. We'll see if that's accurate. Could be off by a mile, she'll mention it. Let me see here. Let's see if I am right. I think I am right. It says Grogan Marciano Sporting Goods. Yeah, I guess they are around. But now it's sporting goods. Back then it was mainly boxing. Yeah. Yeah, they are around. Opens at 10 a.m. it says here. Maybe she still works there. But I haven't been in there, you know, quite a bit of time. I have driven on the outside. I think I went in. Maybe I went in when they changed it to the Grogan Marciano thing. Anyway, a lot of good memories there. I'll tell you a quick story. I went in there and they had really nice boxing gloves, the professional kind. In those days, you couldn't go to Sears and buy those. Sears had cheap ones. This was like the real nice leather, thick ones. And I said, I got to get these. So when I looked at the price, and they were $100 a pair. Now, you're not going to buy one pair, right? How are you going to spar with somebody if you only have one? One, you know, meaning two gloves. So I said, I got to save up. Get $200, I can buy 4 gloves. So I saved up. You know, I saved up. It took a while. $200 back then was good money. And I went back there, and I bought the gloves. And that was the time I ran into Alicia Marciano, and I bought them from her, and I was so happy. Finally got the gloves after a long time of saving my money. I finally got the gloves. So I had a friend, and he calls me up that night, and he was big on eating out. He always liked to go eat out. He was more mature than all of us. We were like still babies back then, and he was very mature for his age, even though I think he was about a year, not a full year, but you know, almost a year younger. And you know, he liked the finer things in life, the restaurant stuff, and we would go with Burger King. So he'd call me up that night. He did call me up that night, and you know, I had just gotten home from the Marciano Sporting Goods store, and he says, "You want to go and eat?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So he came by my house. We got into, he had a 1971 Lincoln back then, one of those big monster cars. I felt like an ant in there, you know. I was in there, you know, a little ant, and it was a white Lincoln. And we went up to this Polynesian place. They had, you know, Chinese food, Asian food, but nobody spoke English in there. They only knew what was on the menu. So I sit there and I'm showing them the gloves. You know, my friend, I'm showing them the gloves. I go, check these out. I finally got to buy them. And yeah, we had our meal and all that. Went home, had my bag with me, and I put the bag on the bed, and I look inside, and there's only 3 gloves. I dropped one at the restaurant. Must have fallen under the table. So I immediately called the restaurant. They were closing up, but you know, some people, waiters were still there. And I said, I was there a little while ago, and I left a boxing glove. Must have fallen out, and I told them the table, and nobody could understand me. They're like, oh, so sorry, no understand. And they passed me on to someone else, and then I repeat the whole story all over again, and then they would say, oh, so sorry, I don't understand. And they did that 4 or 5 people. They passed me around, and at the end, nobody knew anything. So I ended up going up there the following day, and I went and I looked, and nobody knew anything. I even brought a sample glove, like the other. I said, this is right here. Did you guys see this? And everybody was like, no. And I find it hard to believe that somebody, like a customer, somebody would have stolen that glove. For what reason? What are you going to do with it? You know, normally what you would do is you would find that, maybe, you know, see it, and you'd return it to the management, right? But not there. Not there. So I never got to use those gloves. Never get to use them. I mean, I use the 2 gloves occasionally, but I never get to enjoy them the way I thought I would. So just, that's the way that memory went. On the day I bought them, 3 of them survived. 1 of them ended up dying in a Polynesian restaurant. The moon is huge tonight. I'm looking at the moon up there. It's big. Big. Anyway, Alicia Marciano, if you see this video, that's what happened. Very long time ago. Way back in the 80s. And yeah, she was very cute, very cute. That kind of like I was the Karate Kid and she was Allie with an eye, you know, when I saw her. So anyway, that moon right now, I'm looking at it, and I was reading earlier today that moon has a crater on it that is, it was 1,600 kilometers across and 5 to 8 miles deep. Can you imagine the impact? You know, the explosive power to create something that big. That's huge. That's like the Grand Canyon in there. Delicious. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the space program. Big fan of everything space related. I'm always reading brand new information. I'm kind of dissatisfied with the Big Bang Theory. I find that to be asinine. You know, and this is the new asinine thing I've heard. So James Webb, the brand new telescope that's out there about 1 million miles from Earth, has discovered around the event horizon, where the edge would be, you know, that we could see, fully formed galaxies, which means that those galaxies are much older than what we previously thought would be there. We thought that's the beginning of the Big Bang, right? What they call it. So you shouldn't have well-formed galaxies there, because the light that was emitted, you know, billions of years ago is finally reaching us, or it reached us, and we can see it now. But those galaxies should be in the infancy stages, and they're not. They're fully developed, which means, and this is the guy on the video, he's like, yeah, they're having a hard time explaining how the universe could be 13.8 billion years old, and these galaxies are so well defined. I want to tell him, hey, listen up. You know how that happened? You guys made a mistake on the age of the universe. The age of the universe is a lot older than what you think. That is why those galaxies there are fully formed, because the universe is older than what you guys think. They act as if the age they came up with is somehow proven to be 100% true. Well, the fact that you found these old galaxies on the event horizon, right, around that area, tells you that your age, the age that you came up with for the universe, is wrong. Right? It's wrong. That's why the galaxies there are so old. That's the logical conclusion not trying to figure out how did these things become so well formed within 13.8 billion years. They didn't. They didn't. Let's say there's a lot of schmendrixes out there, you know, pretending to be scientists. This place that we're in, this whole universe that we exist in, is bigger than we can imagine. Forget about the 92 billion light years across nonsense. That's nothing. I believe, without any proof obviously, but I believe that the universe is many, many, many times bigger than that. That's probably a drop in the bucket, a drop in the ocean even. You know, and then what comes after that? What comes after that? If they say nothing, I'm going to throw a tomato at them. That's asinine. What do you mean nothing comes after that? Oh, it's being created as the universe expands. No, that's nonsense. That's something that scientists have come up with to satisfy the unknown. I don't know what comes after that. Oh, nothing comes after that. Nothing's been created yet. Well, I'm not listening to that. You know, what comes after that is probably a big void, but how big is the void, and what comes after the big void? Is there a prime reality somewhere? I mean, is this little show that we're in, is this, you know, just a sideshow? I don't know, but you know, no matter how big something is, there's always something beyond that. So yeah, I've been fascinated with why is there something rather than nothing, that question, since I was that big. Even now I think about it, you know, and I think it's impossible to think of nothingness, like nothingness meaning no void, no matter, nothing, including no empty space, which would be a void. I can't even imagine what that would be, you know. I mean, it's just such a strange, you know, your mind gets wrapped around into a, what's the word? Into a knot. So maybe it's impossible to have nothing, but there's got to be nothing somewhere, which sounds ridiculous, but I mean, you know, the universe can't be everywhere. And I guess there is no everywhere. If there's the, you know, I mean, just once again, you start going around in a circle. That's why the fact that this place even exists is hard to comprehend. So people have come up with all sorts of stories to explain the existence of it, but none of those satisfy. None of them. Nothing. Big goose egg on that. You know, I've always thought, you know, what is the universe held inside of? And I mean, even like, let's say this area represents the universe, and let's say this area is, you know, 900 septillion or dectillion light years across, which would dwarf anything we see. Okay, fine, that's a number, that's huge, massive. What's after that? You know, what's beyond that? You know, it would be freaky if you could like pull back from the universe, keep going to the point where you're in this big void, and the void is just endless, and then you look over and somebody says, you see that little dot over there in the distance that looks about the size of a period on a page? That's the universe. That's the entire universe, and that universe is like 999 dectillion light years across, and here we are about, you know, I don't know, 500 dectillions further back, and we could see all that. But it's very strange. It's very strange. I have a feeling that if the truth was ever discovered, it would be mind-blowing. I mean, we wouldn't be able to comprehend it. It would be so crazy. But the fact that we're here, that two people got together at some point, did their little, you know, friction dance, and at that right moment, boom, we were formed, and we're here to discuss this place and to see it. That's mind-boggling. Or at least it boggles the mind. So, very interesting. There's a lot of stuff you think about. You're like, what's, like, to me, the beyond that, the question of what comes after, the furthest point. What comes after that? What comes after that? You could do that till, infinity. And the matter, the material, where did it come from? And why is it the way it is? I mean, okay, even if you have a concept of a multiverse where there's all sorts of weird realities, and this is just one where humanity can exist in some kind of way, then you go, okay, well, it's not the only one, because if it was the only one, then it would be kind of like, got it right the first shot, here we are. But even that, it's not friendly to life. We know that because we haven't found any. You would think if it was a place, that was designed for life, you would find life everywhere beyond Earth. You go to the moon, you see all these crabs up here. They're eating all these rocks, making all these holes in the ground. You look at, like Venus or something, and you'd see, birds flying that are really weird looking to us, and you'd say, well, life is everywhere in the universe. But it's not. It's not. That's why we know it's pretty hostile towards life. But the fact that we exist here, is strange. Every day I think about that. I've become obsessed with, sometimes I look at it as if I came from somewhere. Well, I look at it from the point of view, not that I really came from somewhere else, but I look at it from the point of view as if I'm a visitor looking at all the strange intelligent apes walking around, which is what we are. That's what I am. I'm a primate. We got language. I find the fact of like the mind has this thing that it's discovered or invented called music, and then we take our voice and we elongate words and we sing them, and certain melodies create certain emotions, and they go to #1 on the charts. That's a weird thing. It's a weird thing, this thing called music. I think about that. You sit there, you come up with a melody, makes people emotional. They want to hear it again and again. They buy you records if you're an artist that's made a record. Just weird. And then you have a voice, and you just whatever, do something like that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, did you hear that guy sing? It's like, yes, I did. It was very nice, beautiful song. Ancient people before language, they started doing that, and it's like somebody said, come up with some words here, and they came up with different sounds for different things. Then they came up with syllables. Somebody said, afterwards, we got the ability to speak. Nobody else can do that except a parrot. Cockatoo, is that what they call them? So yeah, if you think about it too much, all of this, the universe, the size, what's it expanding into, what's it held inside of, why is there something rather than nothing? You go nuts. So we occupy our time doing other stupid things that are basically meaningless, but we occupy our time doing those things and pretend they mean something, but they really don't. It's all a show. We're just passing through. We're here temporarily, and don't hurt people, don't lie about people, don't create rumors that are untrue about people. If you do that, you're not a good person yourself. That's rule #1. And the thing is, for people that hear rumors, don't believe everything you hear. Don't be a moron. People say negative things all the time. Don't think because somebody took the time to yap and say something that was bogus that you think that that's true because they took the energy to say those things. There are people that are stupid like that. They'll hear something that's like, sounds like really negative about somebody, and they'll go and spread it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Do you know that to be true? You don't know that to be true. And you're spreading it as if it is true. It's like one of those things, the more you say something, the more you say something that's not true, it starts being, like it's believable now. People start, oh yeah, I heard that. Yeah, you heard it because it came from the same source. 2 people heard it, and before you know it, the rumor made a circle back to you, and now you think because it came back to you that it's true. Don't be stupid like that, Very, very mean-spirited people They spread false rumors about people, and then what happens is, that rumor takes a life of its own because the soldiers of the rumor spread it. And at the end, it turns out that it was not true. But by then, it's too late. It's too late. And when people care about that stuff? When it happens to them, or it happens to their husband or their wife, then they get outraged. I'm outraged. That's not a true story. That's made up. They lied. Well, that's the planet we live on. But I find people like that disgusting. But I find people that believe in rumors even more disgusting. Self-righteous people. I heard something. Can't talk to her. I heard something. Well, yeah, you heard something. Is it true, though? Do you know if it's true? Or you're just defaming somebody? Anyway. So, I haven't heard the latest today, but I don't know. I think they canceled the February 6th launch to the moon. I get very annoyed every time. I know it's safety, but they cancel before you know it's going to be next year, and they still would not have launched. So I'm getting very excited, that they're going to launch and go around the moon. Yeah, like I said, it's a very strange place. Why is there something rather than nothing? Where did all this material come from? Realistically, where did it come from? And that moon is... And because of no atmosphere on the moon, I mean, you can see now that the sun is hitting it because it's very bright. But if you were standing there, you would see the sun in the distance. But if you looked around you, the sky would be black. And it would be like, like suppose you're on Earth at nighttime and somebody flips on a switch for a light in an empty field. It would light up a certain area, but it would still be dark out. And that's what it looks like on the moon, even though the sun is hitting like that right now. If it had an atmosphere, if there was, oxygen and nitrogen and, maybe a little bit of carbon dioxide, the moon would look like it looks here on Earth. Nice and bright. The sky would be nice and bright. Depending on the molecules that make up the atmosphere, that would depend on which color would get picked up. We have the blue here, which looks really awesome. But yeah, if NASA called me up and they said, how would you like to be on the moon flight, I would go. And they say, yeah, well, you don't have enough time to train. I'd say, I don't need to train. What am I going to do up there, run a marathon? I will go as I am. Take a couple of Flintstones vitamins with me and go to the moon. But they will not call me. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. I'd watched The $6 Million Man, and I knew definitely that's what I wanted to be. And then I realized, you got to study for that. This is not just put your name on an application and they call you up. You have to go study for it and all that. And I said, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm not going to be an astronaut. Too much competition. Out of all the thousands of people that want to be astronauts, they only pick a handful. So you got to find something else to do. But that was my thing. I felt like I knew early on what I wanted to do. I want to be an astronaut. They'd ask other kids, and they'd say, I want to be a mechanic. I want to be, open up a pizza place. I want to open up a bakery, whatever. I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, those kind of answers. And me, I knew I wanted to be an astronaut. I want to explore. I want to go to the moon, bring some rocks back. But that didn't happen. Didn't happen. But I've always been fascinated with the universe, anything that has to do with space, since I was that big. I listened to my parents, like they never brought these kind of issues up. I never heard, let's discuss the universe. Let's talk about how big it is. Clueless. I think my mother and father thought the universe was basically the Earth. A couple of things in the sky called stars. Had no idea what those were. And that was it. And the moon, that's it. That's it. Nothing deep about their thinking when it came to that kind of stuff. If you told them what they've discovered in the past, 30, 40, 50 years, they would be in shock. They wouldn't be able to handle it. You know, they'd have a mental breakdown. It's like, oh, I can't stop talking. It's too much information. That's why in the old days they had weird beliefs of how things came to be. They thought it was very simplistic. It was, you know, we were on a snow globe. You know, we were on this planet, and it was like a dome, and we were inside the dome, and there were creatures up above watching us, you know, seeing how we behaved, how we acted. Occasionally, you know, they throw a lightning bolt our way. But the more science progresses, the more we realize that's not the case. It's not the way it is. We're not on a snow globe. We're not in a dome. This is not to show the dome. And we're not the only planet. We're not the only planet. You know, I know the other. What are the other planets around for? Just like decoration. Let's see what's going on here. That's a very strange story. Savannah Guthrie's mother's house declared a crime scene after the 84-year-old was allegedly abducted. That's crazy. Imagine you're sitting in your house, nice and comfortable by yourself. You're an older person. Somebody breaks in at gunpoint or whatever and takes you away, or kills you or something. You know, you never know what's going to happen. You're upstairs sleeping in your bed, nice and comfortable, you know, deep sleep, and then there's some wacko in the backyard with a, you know, a pick or a rock or something, and they're busting into your house. And okay, nowadays people have alarms. It'll set off the alarm, but the problem is by the time the alarm goes off, which is, you know, a second, but by the time they notify the police, by the time the police decide to come over, you may be gone. You may be already, you know, with the 5-6 holes, you know, in your head. So you never know. You're up there at night, got the doors locked, thinking everybody's out, can't get in, and they can get in. They can get in. If you do it a few times, you become good at getting into people's houses. I had a teacher in high school. Very interesting teacher. One of the most interesting history teachers I've ever had. Not one of, he was the most interesting history teacher I ever had. Mr. Robinson. And Mr. Robinson liked to smoke Pall Malls. So in between classes, he'd run. There was an office near the classroom, and he would go in there and smoke a Pall Mall and then come back, and he'd smell all fresh from the tobacco. And he'd teach the class. And he was always blowing his nose. He had a handkerchief in his pocket. Who knows how many pounds of snots were in there wrapped up. Always using the same one. I mean, even if it's one day and then you wash it, I'd rather use Kleenex. I don't know what the fascination is in the old days, carrying a handkerchief full of boogers. You know, I would rather have a roll of toilet paper and just constantly keep using a fresh, you know, piece of paper or a bunch of papers, about that long, wrap it up, and then blow your nose and throw it out. But he had a handkerchief, and he had it in the back pocket like a mechanic when they would check the oil. You know, they would pull it out and check your oil, and he had it back there, and he'd pull it out and fill it up with, you know, a bunch of slime, and then he'd fold it up in a certain way and put it back in. 10 minutes later, he'd do the same thing, and I was thinking, man, I would throw that out after the first, you know, snotful. So he was telling us a story one time while he was at school teaching. Somebody broke into his house and they robbed him. And I guess he believed that robbers always come back again to the scene of the crime, which I don't believe. For what? So you can get caught? So he said he stayed up that night, sitting there in a dark room with a baseball bat and a lit Pall Mall. And he was waiting for them to come back. I'm like, I don't know. That seems like you were setting yourself up to get shot. You think the robbers were coming in there with bats themselves? Probably had some guns in there. They probably say, there's a guy with a Pall Mall, get rid of him. Boom. He was sitting there with a baseball bat waiting for them. Yeah, they came unarmed. We're just going to show up, go rob his house, no protection. So anyway, I was thinking, yeah, at the end of the story, you're going to say they never showed up. I could predict that. So he said, yeah, I waited there for hours and hours, and they never showed up. Yeah, of course they're not going to show up. Why? So you can hit them with a bat? You know, the element of surprise is gone. You know, if you rob a house, you think you're going to come back the next night to get the VCR that you forgot? You know, you cut your losses at that point. You say, yeah, there was a VCR in the corner. I wanted it. And your buddy says, let's go back tonight and get it. We know where it is. No, you're not going to say that, because the element of surprise is gone. And now the guy who owns the house is going to be waiting there, you know, with a candy corso and a bat. So you don't go back there. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on the planet. Every day there's something nutty going. Every day there's something. There's a conflict, there's a war, there's a battle, something, always something going on. You know, I look at it, I don't even know how we get along. It's like we're constantly trying to outdo one another. You get mad enough, you're like, okay, murder's next. I'm going to take these people out tomorrow. They annoyed me. Always something going on. Turn on the news, it'll be like every day something. And then there's something huge that happens every once in a while. Every once in a while there's some major catastrophe that, you know, people can't get over it. They're like, oh, I can't believe that happened. Did you hear about that? I can't believe it. Like, I believe it. I've been around long enough to understand that crazy things happen here all the time. It's like a bus fell off a cliff full of children. You know, all this ridiculous, you know, stuff. Get sick and tired of it every single day. There's some tragedy. You know, and there's really no meaning to it. It's just, you know, if you have many moving parts, that's what happens. Anyway, I was thinking earlier today about a show, That's My Mama. Anybody remember that show, That's My Mama? I think that's what it's called. Ted Lang was on that. And one of my favorite actors of all time. People are always surprised when I mention that he was one of my favorite actors, but a guy named Teddy Wilson, Theodore Wilson. I loved anything he was on. When I was a kid, I'd watch. Something about it, I don't know what it was. I enjoyed Teddy Wilson. He's no longer around, but yeah, so, and I met Ted Lang from The Love Boat. I met him about 12 years back. Yeah, we were at a, locally, you know, around the neighborhood, we were at a, it doesn't exist anymore, but we were at a, like a bakery. It's one of those bakeries, you know, lots of tables. You get your, you get a donut or something with a coffee. You sit there and you know, eat it and chit chat. So I was there. You know, we would go there once a week, twice a week. And one day I was there, and my wife said, "Oh, it's kind of busy. Why don't you find a table and I'll, you know, wait in line." So I found a table with my kids, and I look over. There's Ted Lang comes in, and he sits down. He was with some lady. Sits down there, you know, chit-chatting, and then we ate our, you know, my wife came, drank our coffee, we had our, I don't know what we had, bagels, donuts, whatever it was, and he was still there, and I said, you know what, I want to talk to him. So I got up and I said, hey, how you doing, you know, and we talked, and I said, I used to watch you on that show, That's My Mama, That's My Mama, and he's like, what? He goes, you remember that? He goes, that was such a long time ago. It's a long time ago, but it was one of my favorite shows. Anything with a barbershop in it, I'm a fan of it instamatically. So they had a barbershop on that show, and I used to watch it all the time. Did not last long, though. So yeah, he was very surprised that I knew that show, and that's the one I mentioned. I could have mentioned The Love Boat, but I didn't. I mentioned That's My Mama. So, yeah, and I will add that he was very nice person. That's what I appreciate when you run into these celebrities, and they're so nice. You know, I don't know, I haven't, you know, like I see a lot, but I don't interfere. I don't go, hey, oh, I used to watch you on Starsky and Hutch. I don't do that. Years ago, when Robert Blake was still alive, I found his email somehow, and I emailed him. This is after the murder and everything had happened, and I said to him, "I'd like to meet you and talk to you for a little bit. You know, I'm not too far. You know, I could drive there, no problem, where he is." And he did not respond. I always found him to be a little bit off balance, you know, and it seemed a little bit difficult. So he didn't respond, and he might have thought I was one of those, you know, people that were, you know, a little bit crazy. But I just wanted to meet him. I was a fan of that show, Beretta with the Bird, Freddie. And I love the theme song. That was a great theme song. Sammy Davis Jr. sang that. Awesome. Yep. Beretta. Very peaceful up. Said I mentioned something else. I'm thinking. Yeah, there was something I was going to say, but I slipped the mind. Beretta. Remember Universal Studios. Way back in the early 80s, you'd go there, and part of the, there was a show that you could go and watch, the Animal Tricks, and they would talk about Beretta, and they would bring a cockatoo, a white one, and he would do all the stuff that Freddie would do on that show. What was I gonna say? I don't know. I was gonna say something though, and then I started thinking about Beretta. If you look in Beretta's eyes, Robert Blake's eyes, especially later on in life, when he was doing those videos from his apartment, it's almost like you definitely knew there was somebody crazy inside that brain. Just the way, I don't know, just had that creepy quality. Oh, this is what I was going to say. So, I think this is funny, but obviously the lady, she took it a different way. So, a few months ago, I was at a French grocery store. They have wine, they have all kind of, you know, French food, cheese. You name the cheese, they have it back there. Anything that smells like feet, they have it. So I bought my stuff, and I was hanging out in the front. You know, I was kind of looking, and then I looked up on the side there, and they had pictures. Go, mama boy. That's a mama's boy. So I was looking at pictures that they had put up on the wall of people that had shoplifted. You know, these are people that they caught shoplifting on camera, and they put their pictures on the wall, and I was looking at them, you know, just checking them out. That's all. I was just looking. And the manager, the lady manager, you know, comes over to me, and she says, "Do you recognize them?" And I said to her, "No, but I could find them." And she goes, "Oh, really?" And she gave me like a kind of like a look up and down, and I thought nothing of it. And she went her way, and I kept looking, and then I left. I went back the next day, you know, get some other stuff from not that store specifically, but there were other stores. And I look over, and I noticed all the pictures of the shoplifters were gone. And I go there quite often in that area, and they have not been back. Those pictures have been taken down the day that I, you know, made the comment of I can find them, you know, and they never have been put back up. I don't know what she thought when I said that. You know, I said, "Oh, this guy's crazy. He's going to cause issues for us. Take down these pictures. We don't care that they shoplifted here." But yeah, that's what she did. She came up to me. She goes, "Do you recognize them?" And I said, "No, but I could find them." And the next day when I went back, all the pictures of the wanted people, you know, the shoplifters, they were taken down. And they haven't put back up. So, and she's still there. I see her. She doesn't, you know, I haven't had any interaction with her. But I just found it kind of funny that she asked me that question. I responded, and then she took all the pictures down. So I don't know what that means, but she got something in her head that I was going to do something, and I don't know what she thought. I'm not like I'm Steve McGarrett, right? Start investigating, finding these people and bringing them to justice. No. Anyway, that's what happened. So that's it. That's it for now. I'm gonna make more tea. So that's it for now. Ciao.